The girl stood in the doorway like a ghost. Cole Hastings had seen plenty of things in his years writing collection routes for the Territorial Bank, but he'd never seen a child stand so still. She couldn't have been more than 12, barefoot in a cotton dress gone gray from too many washings, her hair tangled and sun-bleached. Behind her, the cabin leaned to one side, its roof patched with whatever scraps the wind hadn't claimed yet. He'd ridden up expecting to find a man. The ledger said Samuel Garrett owed 4 months on a loan taken out last spring. The land wasn't worth much. Dry soil, sparse grass, a creek that ran only when it felt like it. But debt was debt, and Cole's job was to collect or repossess. The girl didn't move when he dismounted. "Your father home?" Cole asked, keeping his voice level. She shook her head once, slow, deliberate. "Your mother?" Another shake. Cole looked past her into the dim interior of the cabin. He could make out a table, an iron stove with no smoke rising from it, a pile of blankets in the corner. The air smelled like old wood and something sour he couldn't place. "Anyone here besides you?" The girl's eyes flicked to the side, just for a second, toward the back of the cabin. Then she looked at him again and said nothing. Cole had been doing this work long enough to know when someone was hiding something. He also knew when someone was scared. This girl was both. He tied his horse to the post and stepped forward. She didn't back away, but her hands tightened into fists at her sides. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he said quietly. "I just need to speak with Samuel Garrett. He's dead." The words came out flat, like she'd said them before and learned not to feel them anymore. Cole stopped. "When?" 2 weeks back. Fever took him." "And your mother?" "Year before that. Same thing." Cole exhaled slowly through his nose. The ledger hadn't mentioned any of this. The bank didn't care about fever or loss or little girls standing alone in doorways. They cared about numbers. "What's your name?" he asked. "Eliza." "Eliza, I'm going to need to come inside." Her jaw tightened. "No. I don't want to, but I have to. Your father owed money, and when someone dies without paying, we got nothing to take. That's not for you to decide." She stepped into the doorway fully now, blocking it with her small frame. Her chin lifted. "You ain't coming in." Cole could have moved her aside easily. He was twice her size and had the law on his side. But something in the way she stood there, like a barn cat protecting a litter, made him pause. "Eliza," he said carefully, "if there's someone else in there, it'll be easier if you just tell me now." Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then from somewhere inside the cabin came a sound. A cough. Small, wet. Eliza's face went pale. Cole's eyes narrowed. "Who's that?" "No one." "Eliza, please." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, the hardness in her expression broke. "Please don't take my little brother." The words hit him like a fist to the chest. He'd expected furniture, maybe a horse or a plow, something he could load onto a wagon and haul back to town to settle the debt. He hadn't expected this. "How old is he?" Cole asked quietly. 4. "He's sick?" She nodded, and tears welled in her eyes, though she blinked them back fast. "Same fever that took Pa. I've been trying to keep him cool, but he ain't getting better." Cole looked at the cabin again, then at the girl. The sun beat down on the dry earth around them, and the wind carried dust across the yard like it was trying to bury the place altogether. He should have turned around, should have written the loss into the ledger and moved on. That's what the bank would have wanted. That's what made sense. But he thought about that cough, that small, wet sound. "Let me see him," Cole said. Eliza's eyes went wide. "You gonna take him?" "I'm going to look at him. That's all." She hesitated, then stepped aside. The inside of the cabin was worse than he'd thought. The walls were bare, the floor dirt-packed and uneven. A single window let in a shaft of pale light that cut across the room like a knife. In the corner, on a pile of blankets, lay a boy so small he looked like he might disappear into the fabric. Cole crossed the room and knelt beside him. The boy's skin was hot to the touch, his breathing shallow and uneven. His eyes were half open, glassy and unfocused. Sweat matted his hair to his forehead. "How long's he been like this?" Cole asked. 3 days. "You got any medicine?" Eliza shook her head. We got nothing. Cole sat back on his heels and looked at her. She stood a few feet away, her arms wrapped around herself, watching him like she expected him to pull a gun. What's his name? Cole asked. Thomas. Thomas, Cole repeated, looking back at the boy. The kid didn't respond, didn't even seem to hear. Cole had a choice to make. He could walk out, report the situation, let the bank write off the debt, let the territory handle the orphans, if they handled them at all, or he could do something else. He stood slowly and turned to Eliza. Pack what you can carry, he said. Her face went blank with confusion. What? Your brother needs a doctor. There's one in Cimarron, 2 hours' ride from here. We leave now. We'll make it before dark. Eliza stared at him. You? You ain't taking him? I'm taking both of you, Cole said. Now pack. Eliza didn't move at first. She just stood there, staring at Cole like he'd spoken a language she didn't understand. Her hands stayed wrapped around her middle, her eyes searching his face for the trick, the lie, the betrayal she was sure was coming. You mean it, she whispered finally. I don't say things I don't mean, Cole replied, but we need to move fast. Your brother's fever won't wait. That broke the spell. Eliza spun toward the corner and dropped to her knees beside Thomas, running her hand over his forehead. The boy stirred slightly but didn't wake. She looked back at Cole, and this time there was something raw in her expression. Hope, maybe, or the ghost of it. I got a bag, she said. Won't take but a minute. While she gathered what little they had, a change of clothes, a tin cup, a small wooden horse that must have belonged to Thomas, Cole stepped outside and untied his horse. The animal snorted and stamped, sensing the unease in the air. Cole looked at the cabin again, then at the empty land stretching out in every direction. No neighbors, no help. Just dust and silence, and 2 kids barely holding on. He'd been raised to follow rules. His father had been a lawman, his brother a circuit judge. The Hastings family believed in order, in doing things the right way. Cole had taken this job because it made sense. Clean work, clear lines, no moral confusion. But standing here now, he realized how thin those lines really were. The bank didn't care if a little boy died. They cared about balance sheets. Cole cared about something else. When Eliza came back out, she was carrying a burlap sack over one shoulder and holding Thomas in her arms. The boy's head lolled against her chest, and his breathing came in short, ragged bursts. He's heavier than he looks, Eliza said, struggling under the weight. Cole stepped forward and took the boy from her without a word. Thomas was burning up, his small body limp and frighteningly light. Cole settled him carefully against his chest, then turned to his horse. You ever ridden before? He asked Eliza. She shook her head. You're about to learn. He lifted her onto the saddle first, then handed Thomas up to her. She cradled her brother against her, her arms shaking with the effort. Cole swung up behind them both, one arm around Eliza to keep her steady, the reins in his other hand. Hold tight, he said, and nudged the horse forward. They rode in silence for the first hour. The land rolled past in shades of brown and gold, the sun high and merciless. Thomas's breathing grew rougher, his small body twitching occasionally with chills despite the heat. Eliza whispered to him sometimes, soft words Cole couldn't make out, but the boy didn't respond. Is he gonna die? Eliza asked suddenly. Cole kept his eyes on the horizon. Not if I can help it. Why are you doing this? Doing what? Helping us. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. You don't know us. You don't owe us nothing. Cole was silent for a moment. Then he said, Your brother's sick. That's all I need to know. But the bank can wait. Eliza turned slightly in the saddle, trying to see his face. You gonna get in trouble? Probably. Then why? Because it's the right thing to do, Cole said simply, and because no one else is here to do it. Eliza faced forward again, and for a long time neither of them spoke. When they finally reached the outskirts of Cimarron, the sun was low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. The town was small but sturdy, wooden buildings lining a single main street, a church at one end, a saloon at the other. Cole guided the horse toward a white clapboard house with a sign out front. Dr. Samuel Whitmore, physician. He dismounted and reached up for Thomas. Eliza handed him down carefully, her face tight with worry. Cole carried the boy to the door and knocked hard. A moment later it opened. Dr. Whitmore was an older man, thin and gray-haired, with wire-rimmed spectacles perched on his nose. He took one look at the boy in Cole's arms and stepped aside. "Bring him in," he said without hesitation. Cole laid Thomas on the examination table in the front room. The doctor moved quickly, checking the boy's pulse, lifting his eyelids, pressing a hand to his chest. "How long has he been like this?" Whitmore asked. 3 days, Eliza said from the doorway. The doctor frowned. "He's badly dehydrated. Fever's high. Could be typhoid. Could be something else." He looked at Cole. "You his father?" "No," Cole said. "Just someone who found him." Whitmore's eyes lingered on him for a moment. Then he nodded. "I'll do what I can, but I'll need him here overnight. Maybe longer." "Whatever it takes," Cole said. The doctor glanced at Eliza. "You his sister?" She nodded. "You can stay if you want. There's a cot in the back room." Eliza looked at Cole, and he saw the question in her eyes. "I'll be at the boarding house," he told her. "I'll check on you both in the morning." She swallowed hard, then nodded. As Cole turned to leave, Whitmore called after him. "You're paying for this?" Cole stopped at the door. "Yeah." "Good man," the doctor said quietly. Cole didn't respond. He just walked out into the fading light, the weight of what he'd done settling onto his shoulders like a stone. Cole woke to the sound of boots on wood. He sat up fast, his hand instinctively reaching for the revolver on the bedside table. The boarding house room was dark except for a sliver of moonlight cutting through the window. The footsteps in the hallway outside stopped just short of his door. Then came the knock. 3 times. Hard. Cole stood, pulled on his pants and crossed to the door. He opened it slowly, gun in hand. Standing in the hallway was a man he recognized immediately. Warren Michaels, bank enforcer, a man whose job made Cole's look gentle by comparison. "Cole," Michaels said, his voice flat and cold. "We need to talk." Cole didn't holster the gun. "How'd you find me?" "You're not hard to track." Michaels' eyes flicked to the revolver. "You planning to use that?" "Depends on what you're here for." Michaels smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The bank sent me to find out why you didn't report back yesterday. Imagine my surprise when I learned you rode off with 2 orphans instead of collecting what you were owed." Cole's jaw tightened. "The man who owed the debt is dead. The kids had nothing. Then you should have reported that and moved on. The boy was dying. Not your problem." Cole's grip on the gun tightened. "I made it my problem." Michaels stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You think you're a hero, Hastings? You think saving one sick kid makes you righteous?" He shook his head. "All you did was cost the bank money and waste time, and now I'm here to clean up your mess." "There's no mess to clean up," Cole said evenly. "I'll cover the debt myself. Take it out of my pay." "It's not about the money anymore." Michael's eyes were hard as flint. "It's about setting an example. You don't get to ignore the rules just because you feel bad for some kids." "Then fire me." "Oh, I will. But first, I'm taking those kids back where they belong." Cole raised the gun slightly. "No, you're not." For a moment, neither man moved. Then Michaels laughed, a low, bitter sound. "You're really going to pull that trigger? Over this?" "If I have to." Michaels studied him for a long moment, then stepped back. "You're making a mistake, Hastings. A big one. Won't be the first time." Michaels turned and walked back down the hallway, his boots echoing in the silence. At the top of the stairs, he paused and looked back. "This isn't over," he said. Then he was gone. Cole stood in the doorway for a long time after, his heart pounding, the gun still in his hand. He'd just made an enemy, a dangerous one. But when he thought about Eliza's face, about the way she'd stood in that doorway, begging him not to take her brother, he knew he'd make the same choice again. He dressed quickly and headed for the doctor's house. The streets of Cimarron were empty at this hour, the town swallowed by darkness and the occasional flicker of lamplight. Cole walked fast, his boots kicking up dust, his mind racing. Michaels wouldn't let this go. The bank wouldn't let this go. And if they decided to make this a legal matter, Cole didn't have a leg to stand on. He'd disobeyed orders. He'd cost them money. He'd chosen mercy over protocol. And he'd do it again. When he reached the doctor's house, he knocked softly. A moment later, Dr. Whitmore opened the door, still dressed, a lamp in his hand. "Cole," the doctor said, surprised. "It's past midnight." "I know, I need to see the kids." Whitmore stepped aside without another word. Eliza was asleep on the cot in the back room, curled up under a thin blanket. Thomas lay on the examination table, his breathing steadier now, his color slightly better. The doctor had wrapped him in cool, damp cloths, and a tin cup of water sat nearby. "He's improving," Whitmore said quietly. "The fever broke about an hour ago. He's not out of the woods yet, but he's got a fighting chance." Cole let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Thank you. You're the one who brought him here." The doctor looked at him curiously. "Most men wouldn't have bothered." "Most men aren't worth much," Cole said. Whitmore smiled faintly. "No, I suppose they're not." Cole moved closer to the table and looked down at Thomas. The boy's face was peaceful now, his small chest rising and falling in a slow, even rhythm. For the first time since Cole had found him, he looked like a child instead of a ghost. "I need to get them out of town," Cole said. Whitmore frowned. "Why?" "Because someone's coming for them, and I can't let that happen." The doctor was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Where will you take them?" "I don't know yet. They'll need more care, the boy especially. Then I'll find someone who can help." Whitmore studied him. "You're risking a lot for two kids you just met." "Yeah," Cole said. "I am." The doctor nodded slowly. "Then I'll help however I can." Cole turned to leave, but Whitmore's voice stopped him. "Cole," the doctor said, "whatever you're running from, don't let it catch you." Cole looked back at him, then at the sleeping children. "I won't," he said, and he meant it. They left before dawn. Cole woke Eliza gently, his hand on her shoulder, his voice low. She stirred and blinked up at him in the darkness, confused at first, then alarmed. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "We need to go," Cole said. "Now." She sat up fast, her eyes darting to Thomas. The boy was still asleep, bundled in blankets on the examination table, his breathing steady. Dr. Whitmore stood nearby, already dressed, a leather satchel in his hands. "He's stable enough to travel," the doctor said quietly, "but he'll need rest and water. Don't push him too hard." Cole nodded and moved to lift Thomas. The boy stirred slightly but didn't wake. He was lighter than before, or maybe Cole was just getting used to carrying him. Eliza grabbed her burlap sack and followed Cole to the door. Outside, the sky was still dark, the stars fading as the first hint of dawn touched the horizon. Cole's horse stood waiting, saddled and ready. Dr. Whitmore had packed supplies, bandages, a canteen, a small tin of salve, and tied them to the saddle. "Where are you headed?" the doctor asked. "South," Cole said. "There's a settlement near the canyon. Small, quiet, no one asks questions." "And after that?" Cole looked at the two children, Eliza standing beside him, her face pale and uncertain. Thomas limp in his arms, still fighting to live. "I'll figure it out," he said. Whitmore handed him the satchel. "Take care of them." "I will." They rode out as the town began to wake. Cole kept the pace steady but not punishing, mindful of Thomas's condition. The boy remained asleep for most of the ride, his head resting against Cole's chest, his small hands curled into the fabric of Cole's shirt. Eliza sat in front of him, silent and watchful, her eyes scanning the horizon like she was waiting for something to appear. "You think they'll follow us?" she asked after a while. "Maybe," Cole said honestly. "What happens if they do? Then I'll deal with it." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You didn't have to do this." "I know. So why did you?" Cole was silent for a long time. He thought about his father, who'd spent his life enforcing laws that didn't always make sense. He thought about his brother, who'd sentenced men to hang for crimes born out of desperation. He thought about the life he'd been living, following orders, collecting debts, never asking if any of it mattered. "Because I got tired of being the kind of man who walks away," he said finally. Eliza looked back at him, her eyes searching his face. "You think you're a good man?" Cole smiled faintly. "I think I'm trying to be." They stopped near midday to rest and water the horse. Cole laid Thomas down in the shade of a rocky outcrop, and Eliza sat beside him, gently wiping his face with a damp cloth. The boy's eyes opened briefly, and for the first time he seemed to see her. "Eliza?" he whispered. Her face lit up. "I'm here, Tommy. I'm right here. Where are we?" "We're safe," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We're going to be okay." Thomas's eyes drifted to Cole, who stood a few feet away watching them. "Who's he?" the boy asked. "That's Mr. Cole," Eliza said. "He's helping us." Thomas blinked slowly, then looked back at his sister. "You sure?" Eliza nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Yeah, Tommy, I'm sure." The boy closed his eyes again, but this time there was a faint smile on his lips. Cole turned away and walked to the edge of the outcrop, looking out over the land. The sun beat down on the dry earth, and the wind carried the scent of sage and dust. It was a harsh place, unforgiving and empty. But standing there, listening to Eliza's soft voice as she spoke to her brother, Cole thought maybe it didn't have to be. Maybe there was room for something else, something better. When they set out again, Eliza was quieter. She leaned back against Cole slightly, her body relaxing for the first time since they'd met. Thomas slept peacefully in Cole's arms, his fever finally broken, his breathing strong and steady. And for the first time in a long time, Cole felt like he was doing something that mattered. They reached the settlement 3 days later. It wasn't much, a handful of cabins scattered along a shallow creek, a general store, a blacksmith's forge that sent sparks into the evening air. The people here kept to themselves, and that suited Cole just fine. He found a woman named Clara who ran a boarding house on the edge of town. She was older, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, but when she saw Thomas still weak and Eliza exhausted, her expression softened. "They need a place to stay," Cole said. Clara looked at him for a long moment. "And you?" "I need to make sure they're safe." She nodded slowly. "Rooms $5 a week, meals included." Cole paid her for a month. That night, after Thomas was tucked into bed and Eliza had finally fallen asleep in a wheelchair by the fire, Clara poured Cole a cup of coffee and sat across from him. "You their father?" she asked. "No. Uncle, brother, just someone who found them." Clara studied him. "And now you're responsible for them." "For now," Cole said. "And after that?" Cole stared into his coffee. "I don't know." Clara leaned back in her chair. "You ever think maybe they're not the only ones who needed saving?" Cole looked up at her, and she met his gaze steadily. "Sometime," she said quietly, "the people we help end up being the ones who help us." Cole didn't respond, but her words settled into him like stones in a river. Over the next few weeks, Thomas grew stronger. His fever didn't return, and the color came back to his cheeks. He still tired easily, but Dr. Whitmore had said that was normal. Eliza watched over him like a hawk, but slowly she began to relax. She even smiled once or twice. Cole stayed. He found work at the blacksmith's forge, earning enough to pay Clara and keep the kids fed. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was the life he had now. And for the first time in years, he felt like he was where he was supposed to be. One evening as the sun set over the creek, Eliza found him sitting on the porch. "You leaving soon?" she asked. Cole looked at her. "Do you want me to?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I thought you would." "I'm not going anywhere," Cole said. Eliza sat down beside him, her legs dangling off the edge of the porch. For a while, they just sat there in silence, watching the light fade. "Thank you," she said finally. "For what?" "For not taking him." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "For doing what no one expected." Cole smiled faintly. "You're welcome." "You think we'll be okay?" she asked. Cole looked out at the horizon, at the wide-open sky and the land that stretched endlessly before them. "Yeah," he said, "I think we will." Years later, when people asked Eliza about the man who'd saved her and her brother, she'd tell them the truth. She'd tell them about the cowboy who came to collect a debt and left with 2 kids instead, about how he'd risked everything to get Thomas to a doctor, about how he'd stayed when he didn't have to, and built a life when most men would have walked away. Thomas grew up strong. He became a teacher, quiet and kind, beloved by his students. Eliza married a rancher and had 3 children of her own. And Cole Cole stayed in that little settlement by the creek, working the forge and living simply. He never went back to the bank. He never looked back at all, because sometimes the most unexpected choices are the ones that save us. And sometimes saving someone else is how we save ourselves.